Welcome to the Acupuncture Outsider podcast. My name is Richard Hazel, and in the time it takes for you to commute to or from work, I hope to have shared something of interest about orthopedic acupuncture using motor points, trigger points, myofascial slings, neurofunctional acupuncture, segmental treatments, anything that crosses my mind that seems to be of interest. I hope you'll enjoy it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Acupuncture Outsider. This is Richard Hazel, and this should be part one of a three-part series. I'm going to talk about optimizing the lumbopelvic hip complex for sports performance. I just came back from teaching in Barcelona, where I was talking about this topic, and I've briefly mentioned some of those concepts in recent podcasts. But now that I've taught the full subject in Barcelona, I feel like I can now go a little more in depth here for people who were not able to attend and who are interested in treating athletes, especially professional athletes, the people at the top of their skill level. And so this is going to be the lumbopelvic hip complex and optimizing for speed, power, and agility in the sagittal plane. I will do two more episodes, one for the frontal plane and one for the transverse plane. But today is about the sagittal plane, and that is the flexion and extension of the hip. So let's talk about something called triple extension. And yes, part of triple extension includes the low leg, which is not a part of the lumbopelvic hip complex, but it is an essential part of optimizing the hip, because you end up with Achilles injuries when the triple extension is not optimal at the hip. So what is triple extension? So extension is moving the leg back, essentially. So you're gonna think about the gluteus maximus as your primary power for hip extension, and the hamstrings and the adductor magnus are going to be the other powerhouse on hip extension. Those are your big guns for hip extension and for explosive power. The next part of of triple extension is the quads. The quads extend the knee. So that's the second extension. The quads, you're mostly looking at rectus femoris, which acts as a hip flexor and a knee extensor. And then the vastus muscles, the lateralis and the medialis, those are going to extend the knee, and that is part of your triple extension. And then the other extensors are really plantar flexors, are going to be primarily the gastrocnemius and the soleus, though you could look at the other extensors, especially when there's some sort of foot injury. You would be looking more at the other plantar flexors, but for what I'm talking about for sports performance, I'm not talking about treating pain and injury. I'm talking about sports performance. We are going to optimize the big movers for triple extension. So that reminds me to say, if you've been in the world of orthopedic acupuncture for a while, you've mostly been taught how to treat pain, how to treat injury. And this is not that. This is sports performance. So by fixing the sports performance, by improving the sports performance, in many cases, you will be getting rid of pain because you're improving the movement pattern. And that's what functional acupuncture is all about. It's not highly focused on pain and saying, oh, well, you have pain here. Let me stick needles there and electro-stim and get rid of the pain. Functional acupuncture says, oh, you have pain there. What is dysfunctional with the movement or the way your joint is loading that is causing pain? Let's fix the movement pattern. Let's make the joint work better so that you will not have pain. And that's why you won't hear me talk a lot about spinal segments when I'm talking about treating athletes or pain, because I don't highly focus on trying to get rid of the pain. I do what Vladimir Yonda suggested, which was if you improve the joint range of motion, the pain will be resolved. So it's a little bit different thinking. It's not highly focused on trying to neuromodulate or block pain, because that's a temporary solution. Functional acupuncture is focused on correcting movement patterns to alleviate the source of the pain, which is going to be movement patterns that rub or put extra stress on smaller muscles that are not meant to be overused. So when we're talking about sports performance, one of the most important movers in the sagittal plane, after we talk about glute max and the hamstrings and adductor magnus for hip extension, we look at hip flexion, and the big gun there is the iliopsoas, the iliacus-psoas partnership. That is a primary hip flexor, and it is the initiator of the swing phase on walking and running. So during that float phase while running, the iliopsoas, the iliacus and the psoas engage first to rapidly swing the leg forward to the next heel strike or first contact of the foot. So that the faster your athlete can swing the leg in running, the faster they can run. And the iliopsoas also tends to be the first muscle to start causing a problem with the posterior chain. The iliopsoas is so overused and often kept in a shortened position, while sitting, or people who sleep curled up. The psoas is very likely to contract and shorten, and that shortening of the muscle, while it may not be painful to the person, is going to cause problems with the posterior chain. The contracture of the psoas, the shortening of the psoas, is going to reciprocally inhibit the gluteus maximus on hip extension. So we need to focus on keeping the psoas as elastic and strong, and to have also that eccentric contraction strength. So basically, the psoas being able to engage in a stretched position, that eccentric contraction that we need for mobility and strength. So the more elastic and extensible the psoas is, the faster it can swing forward while running. That's also power for kicking sports. The iliopsoas is essential for power in kicking sports. And remember, power is not just strength, it's how fast you can be strong. Power is strength plus speed. So the better the health of the iliopsoas partnership, the faster the athlete can perform, and to bring strength with speed. So in that sagittal plane for running and kicking, the iliopsoas needs to be optimal. The rectus femoris is the other big gun for hip flexion and is very important for running and walking. It will assist in hip flexion and kicking. The rectus femoris also crosses the knee. So for knee extension, the rectus femoris is very, very important and powerful. So if you think about squatting down and then jumping, the glute max, hamstrings, and adductor magnus are all going to be pushing very, very quickly and at maximal strength. And the quadriceps will help with the knee extension that's going to be explosive on a jump. And that rectus femoris is very important for that knee extension. So the rectus femoris is prone to contracture. When people get patellar knee pain, rectus femoris is the number one culprit for that. So you want to look at maximizing the elasticity, contractility, and extensibility of the rectus femoris. So you're going to be treating the rectus femoris for triple extension, as well as the vastus muscles of the quads to maintain power on triple extension. And then the last part of that triple extension is going to be the gastrocnemius two muscles and the soleus. So you want to include treatment of the gastrocs and soleus for athletes who need that power on triple extension. So you're talking volleyball, basketball, so many sports that have jumping, sprinting, and even things like Olympic lifts use triple extension. Now, there is some debate about the ankle part on full extension for like Olympic lifts. Okay, and there are running coaches who say that full extension on triple extension could slow sprinters, so they might want to keep their knees slightly bent. But that's not our hill to die on as human performance experts who are really helping athletes to perform at their best. We don't care if their coach has them fully extend their knee or not. We want to optimize those muscles, the quadricep muscles, for their running. And however they learn to sprint fast is not our problem, or it doesn't change our goals of optimizing those muscles of the quadricep muscles. As far as like the quads and the hamstrings can inhibit each other. So tight hamstrings can reciprocally inhibit the strength of the quadricep muscles. So of course, we're considering that as well. We want basically, at the end of the day, what I'm saying is we treat all of these muscles for sports performance in the sagittal plane for triple extension. It's always important to work with each athlete for their unique needs. So understand your athlete, understand their needs. At the end of the day, I recommend that you also think about triple extension for your athletes, even if they don't have a chief complaint of something like knee pain or hip pain or low back pain. I'm jumping out of that paradigm of acupuncture is only for pain. I'm saying we can do so much more, and knowing what we can do for athletes is very important because they're used to coming to people with a problem, And what I'm saying is we can do more than solve those problems. We can improve their sports performance with electric stimulation acupuncture in the motor points of the muscles. And I would also talk about do some gentle instrument assisted soft tissue work because the fascia is huge for flexibility and strengths and proprioception, injury avoidance and motor control. Proprioception is huge. So you can also include doing some instrument assisted soft tissue work on the fascia of the hamstrings at the near the ischial tuberosity area, that adductor magnus and hamstring attachment area, behind the knees where the hamstring tendons come down. Work on the tendons there. If they're face up, work on the upper part of the quadricep muscles where below the ASIS, like in that sartorius rectum area. That's an awesome area to work. There's a lot of fascia there. Work off the TFL and the vastus lateralis area. Work down the IT band. All of those high, fascia areas are going to give added elasticity and flexibility for an athlete. So this is a great way to help them optimize as well. I would recommend treating the muscles first and then do the soft tissue work. And it's always nice to check ranges of motion before and after treatment so that your athlete can appreciate what you've done for them before they even get out on the field. It's nice for them to see the after and realize like what you've actually done for their mobility and their sports performance, their ability to be strong quickly. So a lot of that this is the sagittal. This is just the sagittal plane. But if you want to make someone run fast, this is hugely important. And of course, it has to be combined with the lateral stabilizers, which is the next episode. But it's important to realize that if you want to help your athletes know about triple extension and seek to improve their triple extension, you can do manual muscle tests. You could do length testing of the hamstrings. You can test the length of the quadriceps. You can do hip length testing. You can do adductor length testing. You can do manual muscle tests to test how everything is before. It's really up to you how you like to screen athletes for their before and after. But it's always, especially if it's someone who's new to your care, it's nice to do those tests in advance and then after treatment so they can see how it goes. When you're in a maintenance mode and they're feeling pretty good, I just recommend do the posterior chain, and then of course we'll talk later about the lateral chain, and then the anterior chain to get the quads and the low leg. Because even if they're feeling good, you are going to help optimize their performance and help them avoid injury. And that's really, I think, the goal of these 3 episodes is really to talk about the things that we can do that are not highly focused on just injury and pain, because I don't think a lot of people realize that acupuncture is improving the qualities of skeletal muscle. It's improving contractility. It's improving extensibility, elasticity, and excitability. And that's huge. It's important to know for injury, treatment of injury, but it's essential to know that as an acupuncturist who does something like what I do, like functional acupuncture, we can do more than just treat pain. And at the end of the day, when we are treating pain, we're basically using the same principles. We're saying, why are these muscles out of balance? which ones are contracted, which ones are inhibited. Let's release the contraction and restore elasticity and contractility. And the inhibited ones, let's increase the excitability and contractility of these inhibited muscles. Let's get the muscle back to firing the way it's supposed to fire and getting the blood flow restored to those contracted muscle cells, get the ATP in there and, release the contracture so that there isn't an energy crisis that's going to lead to more issues, and really just restore the health of skeletal muscle so that there's no more joint dysfunction or movement dysfunction or instability that leads to pain. And so I think it's important to put this out there when you're thinking functionally. These are your goals. And you're not going to highly focus on, what segment is involved, because that's a pain treatment. And it's not, in most cases, that just highly focusing on the segment, especially for sports, is not going to be sufficient. You have to fix the movement patterns, the stabilizers, the skeletal muscle. You have to fix the health of the muscle itself. It's not enough to just treat pain and try to hide pain or get rid of pain temporarily. You have to fix the actual problem, muscle imbalances caused by contracture or inhibition of different muscles, and get the qualities of skeletal muscle restored. Okay, so that's like the first episode. The next one, I'm going to talk about lateral stabilization. We'll talk about things like abductors, hip abductors and adductors, and what roles they play in sports, and how we can optimize those, and how they can help avoid injury. Okay, so that's that for today. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you next week.